Hey listeners, if you've been listening to our show, chances are you've heard the wonderful contributions of our favorite Tolkien scholar, Marilyn R. Pukila. Marilyn just launched her own podcast on our network called Rings and Rituals.
Join me and Dr. Sarah Brown on our journey through the Lord of the Rings of Power, through the lens of ritual. Episodes drop every other Wednesday on the Rings and Rituals feed, linked in the show notes. See you there.
Welcome to the Shogun podcast. We're the Lorehounds, your guides to the political intrigues of feudal Japan. I'm David.
I'm John, and this is our coverage. I'm back.
You're back. I was expecting
I'm
Alicia.
Back. I know. It's been a long time. I've been in the abyss of life.
Yes, Indeed. Well, welcome back. It's good to hear your voice.
Thank you. And also with you. I think we did Second Breakfast about a week ago, but other than that, it's been like 3 or 4 weeks since I've really done a full breakdown. So let's get into it.
All right.
This is our coverage for episode 8, titled The Abyss of Life, of the FX limited series Shogun.
So we're going to start off today with our hot takes. We're going to do an abbreviated hot takes because I already did half an hour with Alicia.
Yeah.
But we'll touch on the episode a little bit, and then we're going to get into a discussion of plot, theme, character, along with our favorite moments. We've got some historical notes that we'll throw in the front before we do the break. And then we've got some listener feedback. We got a great voicemail from Abby and a couple of emails.
Cool. Please send us feedback, as we love to hear your thoughts and reactions. Send it all to shogun@thelorehounds.com or head to the contact page on our website, thelorehounds.com, and use the form or record us a voicemail that we can drop right into the episode.
If you would like, you can support the community by going to Supercast or Patreon, and you can support us there. We'll talk more about all of that at the end of the podcast. As well, we'd invite you to join the ongoing conversation on our Discord. Again, links in the show notes. As well, we've got a whole bunch of... We're sponsoring 4.5 other podcasts, John.
I know. It's crazy.
We just brought online a Fallout podcast.
Our fief grows.
It does. With Aaron and Chase, and they're doing Fallout. We have Marilyn with and Dr. Sarah Brown doing Rings and Rituals, deep dive Tolkien stuff. We've got Anthony and Steve doing a season of Felonies and Fugazis.
I know. We've got 4.5 cuckoos going.
That's right. Exactly. Your podcast fiefdom is measured in koku of podcasts.
Cuckoos. I'm doing the Blackthorne thing. Don't worry, Abby. You don't need to write in. It's okay.
Anyway, we'll talk more about it at the end of the podcast. And there are links. Please go to the links in the show notes and subscribe to all of those podcasts and listen to them. John, you've had a lot of catching up. Well, I don't know. Did you have to catch up and run, or have you been keeping along?
Well, now I've had a few days to think about it all, because I caught up. I finished catching up middle of the week this week, and I was like, all right. So I had enough time to digest all this. I can't believe how good the show is. I can't believe how well it's going. I mean, I was hesitant to take on the show because I'm just always hesitant to take on, like, all right, this is going to be the next Game of Thrones, and that's what this was being presented as.
Right.
I was like, every time I hear that, I'm disappointed.
Non-franchise prestige stuff. We've gotten our fingers burned a couple of times.
Yeah. But this is the real deal. I've also been listening to the audiobook the whole time.
Right.
I'm about 3/4 through the book at this point, and I'm about on par with where we're at in the show, which makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so different. It's like a completely different story after episode like 4 or 5.
Okay.
And I think in a good way. I think they really elevate this story by focusing on different characters. Like, the book is really Blackthorne's story.
Right.
This show,
a foreigner in a strange land, a strange man in a strange land kind of thing.
Right. This show, though, is about Mariko and Toranaga and even Omi and Yabushige. Like, everybody has some part of it, and they're really using it as a kaleidoscope. Oh, do I dare use the word? They're using it as a kaleidoscope to show us the different aspects of the society, to show us the freeing things about this way of life, to show us the imprisoning ways of the imprisoning aspects of this way of life. And I think it's really a really beautiful, rich tapestry they've woven of this world.
John, are you weaving tapestries? I'm in your head.
I know. Anyway, loving it. This episode is no different. I think, not a single thing I would change. It was really good. There were a couple, I guess my one critique would be, I thought Mariko did feel like a little bit of a shock for a minute, her statement to Buntaro.
Okay.
But the more I thought about it, the more I liked it, because I was like, okay, that actually makes a lot of sense. And what's brilliant about it, I want to talk about it later, but what's brilliant about it is it pushes back against one of the biggest critiques of the book, which is this obsession that Clavel gives the Japanese characters with death and suicide and seppuku.
Right. And, interesting. There's an interesting counterpoint. She's refusing the death.
Right, because she's saying, the only reason I asked for death was to get the hell away from you. I'm not going to death with you. And that's great because it makes it so much richer, right?
Yes,
like her motivations make so much more sense. Because honestly, her obsession with he keeps refusing my death felt a little tonally dissonant with the series in the show, even though it's very common in the book, right? I mean, there's a whole scene in the book that didn't happen in the show early on. That's like Blackthorne threatens to commit seppuku, and that makes everybody all of a sudden have respect for him.
Right.
And so there's this really, I think, inaccurate, it seems like, and kind of slightly offensive obsession with suicide that Clavel gives these characters. Whereas in this show, we see that seppuku is a duty, but not everybody wants to do it. Right. And the people who do want to do it have their reasons, right? It's not something random. It's not like, oh, I'm obsessed with death. I'm Mariko. I'm just obsessed with death. I'm this lovely flower for John Blackthorne to pick, and I'm just withering away too quickly. No, it's not that. She is a full character who just wants some autonomy, and that's beautiful.
Dang. You got a lot to say.
I do. It's been a while. So
let's keep
you want
going.
to give your quick thoughts?
Just a quick. I got to talk a little bit about it with Alicia on our little half-hour pod. I loved everybody's reactions. They were like, I saw the podcast drop and I noticed that it was only 30 minutes. And I was like, what the hell? So sorry to surprise everybody. We wanted to get you something until John and I were able to get together. I think the thing that I want to say the most about this is more series meta commentary, that the construction of the episodes is really extraordinary. The way that they keep the majority of the screen time of any given episode so tightly focused on one main plot point that everybody's sort of weaving around, with only minor deviations or little side plots just to keep things going. And that's extraordinary. And it's a bit of an inversion of the idea of, well, we've got this character and that character, A, B, C, D, E, F plots, and going to this idea that sometimes less is more. And by narrowing our focus, we're getting a greater picture of the whole world by looking at the micro. Sure. We get a sense of the macro.
Sounds like a tea ceremony.
And it's an incredible way to tell stories. And right now, this show is trending as a damn near perfect season. Yeah. And it's such a complex world that they've built, but I never have felt lost. I've never felt slowed down. I've never caught myself looking at my phone. I'm always right on the edge of my seat with the story. And that's really incredible. And one thing I want to do just on a construction, rather than, because we're going to talk about character and plot later, but there was a construction that they set up in this episode, and they've done this a couple of times, where they will introduce something at the beginning, and then that'll be like this little sliver of a B plot, and then they'll cap the episode with a resolution of that at the end of the episode. And so they create these little rhyming couplets throughout. And there's this one really great scene where Hiramatsu and Toranaga, we have their big, ending, situation at the end of this episode. But it was kind of set up earlier on when Alvino was there, and Hiramatsu's in the same place that he will later then commit seppuku.
Yeah.
And, and there's all the stuff that's going on there. And it's just an incredible amount of attention to detail and to character and to plotting. And every episode is so well constructed that never once has my attention wavered off the screen during this. And that's a really extraordinary accomplishment. So
I think to your point, I think that's a great point. I think to your point, season structure makes a lot of sense too, because you've got these characters really naturally developing with the same motivations. For example, Yabashige in the beginning, rescues the Anjin-san.
Right.
And he does that without orders from Toranaga. And Toranaga's like, yeah, I could use this loose cannon guy. I could use that.
Literally cannon.
He will always do what he thinks is best for him. So Toranaga makes him think that this thing is best for him, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's one of his tools with Yabashige. He's able to lead him. And Blackthorne will always do an impulsive thing that he thinks will get him out of the execution chamber in this moment. And that's going to Yabashige in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Crimson horseshit.
Crimson horseshit, right.
Yeah. So,
cool.
I mean, really great. Really, really great stuff.
Yeah. It's an incredible piece of television. I'm so glad. I was kind of nervous, same with you, going into it, going like, oh, this could just be a microwaved reheat of the original series. But this is an extraordinary television show.
Right. I think if they had just done a straight adaptation of the book, it would have been a failure.
Agreed. They really have taking it, developing the story in new ways and actually going with the characters and letting the characters. And then it's interesting listening to the official podcast a little bit about how much input the actors have had in their characters and how that's led in certain directions. So yeah, aces. Okay.
Yeah. I just want to say one more thing.
Please.
I think that the book really stalls out in the middle, and really the action, it's not that you need action all the time, but you need some kind of tension building.
Right.
To keep me hooked. And this show has done an amazing job of getting like Saeki. And I listened to Abby's voicemail. I'm trying before I even start. So Saeki, and you have
Ochiba.
Nagakado.
Yep.
Yeah. Ochiba is another one where you're just like, what is her motivation? And there's so many.
Well, they didn't introduce her
simmering.
They didn't introduce her till episode 5.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Well, anyway, why don't we talk a little bit about the history before we dive into the episode?
Sure.
So I just put 2 points here. I wanted to talk about the tea ceremony, which I guess is called Chanoyu.
Okay.
Maybe Abby will tell me how to pronounce that one. But yeah, it's basically a very true ancient ritual. It's got 4 guiding principles. It's harmony, respect, purity, and tranquility.
Okay.
And the whole point of it is to sort of make you focus on these really stylized, really precise movements and just experiencing the tea ceremony so that it evokes self-awareness and honesty and generosity. And so this is what Buntaro is trying to do. He's like, let me break down whatever barriers are
reset our
us.
Relationship. Yeah.
And let me pitch you, joint suicide.
Yeah. And I think probably, as I understand it, being a tea ceremony master, it's something that a samurai or a noble would have had experience with and would try to excel at. And where in their relationship in the past did he make tea for her?
Right.
As part of their relationship. So let's go to the place that we first dated or something like that. Right.
Yeah.
The first cafe we had our first coffee, or, he's trying to get back to that essential nature of their relationship, but he fails to read the room again.
Totally.
Yeah.
Anyway, it does seem that the tea pouring, the preparation of tea in itself is considered a performance.
Right.
And that's even true if you go in the book. When Blackthorne is taken to Kiku by Mariko, he is watching her pour tea, and she's like, "Hey, you need to compliment her right now. You need to, that was a good performance." So it's very important. This whole thing, this give and take, And I'm really glad that they captured it so well, because I was so taken with this, and that matcha looked good. I want some of that tea.
Listen to the shout out to the official podcast for episode 8. They have a great conversation about not only the tea ceremony itself, but designing that room and making sure that they could film in that room and actually capture the ceremony in a particular way. Yeah. So very cool.
And there's a whole thing about, like, when you enter, you have to come through a door that's just too small for anybody. And no matter your rank, you have to come through the small door and bend
no
down.
Weapons. Right. Yeah.
So it's like it's supposed to be really humbling. It's supposed to sort of make you focus on specific trees in the forest so that you're distracted from the whole distraction of life.
Interesting.
Anyway, one more point I wanted to make about the history. I know you have some things, though.
Yeah.
There's this, and I wrote the word geisha on the outline, even though that's not used in the show. It is used in the book, I think historically inaccurately.
Correct.
Because geishas did not appear until a couple hundred years later. But the foundation of the profession is in this era. Like, this is accurate that
Sengoku.
This era saw Edo establish the first districts for sex work and districts for the legitimization of it. And I think, Toranaga seeing tax, his soldiers spend a lot of money. He's going to get a lot of that back in taxes. And he's seeing safety for people, right? You have these organizations, and they'll be right next to the church, keeping an eye on them, and there'll be some kind of legitimacy with a guild and everything.
Right.
So I think it's very cool. There's a much more explicit. I think the show does a better job of, like, being subtle, whereas the book is very explicit, where Gin comes in and says, oh yeah, we're going to create a new profession, a geisha, if you will, and they're going to do art and not focus on sex necessarily, and this and that. And it's a little bit on the nose, but they did a really good job with the subtlety in the show.
Cool. I had a few notes as well. I wanted to just quickly touch on the funeral, that this is a Buddhist funeral, but as Nate pointed out on the Discord too, it's with a Shinto surrounding. Like, they actually enter through one of the Shinto gates to come into this area, but those are Buddhist monks, and that is to do a cremation is a Buddhist ceremony in and of itself. So I was doing just a little bit of a light reading about Shintoism and Buddhism and how that they are actually very compatible in Japan, and people would often do certain things with Shinto and then other things in Buddhism, and that neither were antagonistic to each other, and in fact often very complementary. And in certain temples and religious centers, there would be representations of the other there at the same time. Yeah. So I thought it was really interesting. In Shinto, which is a polytheistic and animistic religion, I guess,
or perhaps not a religion.
I was actually kind of air quoting the religion. With the belief in spirits and kami, which sort of inhabit everything, as well as thinking about ancestors a lot. So I really loved the funeral scene and seeing that. The white in Japan apparently is the color of death, whereas in a lot of Western cultures we use black for symbolizing death. And then the whole stylized ritual of washing the body and placing it and doing all the different things, even having a wake, which we see with Omi, when Omi gives a speech for his friend. So they really put a lot of thought and effort into the whole funeral ceremony, which was really, really lovely.
They did. Can I just add on the Shinto point?
Yeah.
There's a whole passage in the book that I thought was really fascinating, which I understand why they would cut it for time in the show, but I thought it was really interesting. And maybe somebody could write in, somebody familiar with these traditions could write in to say if this is accurate or not. But this idea Mariko expresses to Blackthorne, he's like, you consider yourself Shinto? She goes, yeah, I'm Shinto as much as I'm Japanese. And that doesn't conflict with my Christianity. That's just part of being Japanese. Everyone in Japan is Shinto.
Nice.
Because it's not really necessarily theistic even, right? It's just spirits. And so, and I think the same thing is true of Buddhism, right? Like, there are I mean, even today, you see there are Christians who say, I like the philosophies of Buddhism and I don't subscribe to the theology of it, but that doesn't mean I can't practice this wise person's, teachings.
Right. Right.
So I thought that's interesting. It's an interesting distinction between sort of a religion and cultural foundation.
Right. In a way of believing the framework that you're, the matrix at which you're looking at life and you're understanding things,
right,
as opposed to being a monotheistic, which is there's one path and there's one salvation, and this is what you got to do to get through the gate.
Well, also, I think this whole conversation kind of betrays a Western understanding of religion, right? Because
exactly.
Eastern religions, and I know the world does not actually have an East and a West, but I'm using it as shorthand so you know what I mean. But Eastern religions, people don't think about religion the same way, especially in the traditional sense, right?
Right.
It's not like I need to believe wholeheartedly in this one tradition at the exclusion of all others.
Rules to obey.
Yeah, religion and philosophy are much more similar, and there's not this kind of elevation of religion over philosophy in terms of faith, right? The faith is such a it feels very tied to Christianity and Western culture in general. This idea of like I need to wholeheartedly believe this, or it's meaningless. Anyway, that's for a more philosophical podcast.
It's a different conversation. Yeah. I wanted to make a quick highlight across the poetry, or waka. There was a lot of poetry in this episode. At least two instances of poetry with Mariko and Buntaro, and then again with Toranaga. And so I did a quick scouting of the information available on the internets. And I didn't realize that there's a whole range of poetry far and away beyond haiku. I mean, haiku is something that I remember learning in grade school, and we sort of learned the 5-7-5 pattern, which of course English syllable construction is different than Japanese syllable construction. So we have to sort of bear that in mind as well in terms of translations. And where we know haiku and it's about nature and these fleeting moments of life, there's senryu, which is like haiku, but it's a bit more satirical and about human nature. Still has that 5-7-5 pattern, but it goes into more about it's sort of poking fun. It's a little bit more comical and a little bit more observational. I guess there's something called choka, which is a long form poetry where you can just go on much further, and tanka, which is a 5-7-5-7-7, which gets into emotions and observations of nature, reflections of life. And then there's renga, which is linked verse, where you might be sitting around, and Nate has a great post on our Discord about this going, because I was like, wait, is that a tanka or a renga? And he's like, oh, renga and a linked verse. And he gave a whole great description of this, where you could be at the bar with your friends drinking sake, and you would get into a poetry rounds where you would be sort of improvising off of each other. And so we see a little bit of that where Mariko and Buntaro are doing that, where she opens up with something and then he comments and she finishes it off. So there's a whole rich world, especially for nobles and samurai. Samurai, I believe, were expected to be as good with their poetry as they were with swords. Like that's something, especially if you're a noble, like you should be working on along with your tea ceremony. So it's not just, I think this goes to your point earlier about this Western skewing of the lens of death and seppuku and things like that.
Right,
there was so much life affirming cultural practice, tea ceremonies and art and calligraphy and swordsmanship and poetry. So it was a much richer environment than just what we have sort of seen in a lot of film, where we see samurai fighting and this kind of stuff. It was a very different experience.
Right.
So I love that they were able to touch on that and open that up a little bit in the show this week. I didn't do anything really on any research on hawks this time around.
David
got into
told me before this podcast he wanted to catch a movie, and
yes,
he's going on about hawks that he doesn't know anything about.
Accipiters. I got bogged down into morphology and all this kind of stuff. Just know that peregrines are the fastest animal on the earth, and they fly high and they come down hard and fast, where goshawks hunt at the edge of forest. They're very opportunistic hunters, using a lot of stealth. But they were, in Western Europe, they were considered the cook's bird, which was meaning that they were very proficient at capturing game. So where I think Mariko is a peregrine and Blackthorne and Yabushige are definitely goshawks.
You unleash Mariko when you need her.
Right. And she flies high and then she comes, you don't even see her, and she's like a bullet out of the sky. Cool.
All right. Let's take a quick break. When we get back, we will dive deeper into the episode. And we're back. David, we've got a lot to talk about. Shall we do themes, or shall we go right into...
I think we just skip this themes for now, other than to point out that the topics of allegiance and loyalty and again, fate were very present in this. And then I think we can talk about allegiance maybe later. But I just thought it was very interesting that they were asking these questions of, when is loyalty a disservice or does it do harm? I thought Omi's path through this was very interesting. So, but there's a lot of subtlety in the way that they're rolling these themes out, and it's really beautiful to see, because they're not pointing a big line, oh, here's the theme, right? It's the characters are working their way through these things as part of their of what they're trying to accomplish in the story, and it's just great. It's really it's so literary. It's perfect. Right. Anyway, I think we should move on. Let's
move on to Nagakato's funeral. I didn't get to comment on his death, but boy, for a guy who you really wanted to punch in the face the whole series, you do feel really bad for him at the moment of death. And that's effective writing, right? Is making me feel badly for someone who I truly thought was a total little shit the whole series.
Right.
But there's going to be 49 days of mourning. Of course, Toranaga skips the first day at least.
Yep.
And the generals are wearing their armor in protest at the funeral.
Interesting. And we got 3 new characters, which we don't really get to meet or know their names, but yet they're a presence. And it makes sense, right? He would have other forces, and especially protecting his main city. So it introduced a new element into the dynamics. And it was really... I thought we were going to stay in Ajiro the whole time, and suddenly we're in Edo, and it's like, whoa, whole new world, new characters.
Yeah. Well, they go to Edo in the book, but it's like totally different circumstances, so I'm not going to belabor it. But and I love that Toranaga is doing... I think Alicia called it 10D chess in your 30-minute podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
He's doing such a good job at 10D chess that his own generals are like ready to literally kill themselves rather than go along with his plan.
Right. And I think that's interesting. This is sliding sideways a little bit, but the theater that Toranaga has to put on so that it's so convincing, because there are spies everywhere. And it's like, oh, of course there's spies everywhere. And they even dropped a couple of spy notes in the episode. And so the idea that he's able to use Nagakato's funeral as part of this theater is so cold and calculating, but damn, it's so effective.
Yeah.
It's and it gives him that time, this extra 49 days to figure things out. And I can't wonder, like, what would have happened if Nagakato was successful in killing his uncle? What then would have Toranaga's play been? Like, how would that have worked out?
I don't know. I think that Saeki's people would have just murdered everybody in that village, because they outnumbered them by a large number.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
But the element of surprise was with Toranaga. So maybe you got to... I'm going to put it to a coin flip.
Yeah, but then what's the political allegiance? It's like, okay, my son killed you, but I'm still a Minowara, and I'm still... his older brother. So yeah, there's a lot there.
Yeah, the honor thing would be to have Nagakato commit seppuku, right? Is to put him to death for the killing of his uncle, illegal killing of his uncle, of a regent. Of a regent.
See, if he wasn't a regent, then it might be different.
I don't think so.
Interesting.
I think, this guy's a lord, whether you like it or not. You can't go around killing lords outside of war. And they're not in war technically.
Can't you?
Okay, look at this. Look at the circumstances of this killing. He uses a courtesan to deceive him into being naked and unarmed. And, I just don't think there's any honor in that as far as this society. I'm not saying I'm going to make a moral case against it, but as far as the rules of this society, as they've taught us, I think Nagato has to commit seppuku after that.
The fact that he died in this accidental way and wasn't successful, at least Toranaga gets his 49 days and gets to go back to Edo.
I think he'd still get his 49 days.
Even
maybe not. Actually, I don't know. Maybe somebody could write in the rules of mourning after seppuku.
Right. Anyway, fascinating and fascinating to see Toranaga constantly planning and scheming, even though we don't see it.
Yes.
But he's constantly on the outside of these circumstances going, okay, how do I use this to my advantage? How do I take it? What do I do now? Oh shit. Like that didn't go the way that I wanted. Oh, he shot him with a cannon. Oh crap. What do I do now?
I was honestly convinced myself that he had given up until towards the end. I didn't believe Hiramatsu. I was like,
right.
Nah, he's done with this, guys. I thought it was all hopeful, wishful thinking.
They did an excellent job of leading us on. Yeah.
Right. But it was believable by the end, right? That he was playing.
When he was on the horse at the beginning of this episode and doing his whole sick man thing, I was like, boy.
Well, I wasn't believing that. But
but
I did believe that he was sick by the time we got to him waking up in the morning and coughing with nobody was around to hear.
Mm-hmm. I just thought the acting was great. Like, I'm going to pretend to be sick, but I'm going to pretend to be sick pretending to be sick. I don't know. It was great. It was really...
I don't know. I still think he might actually be sick, but we'll see.
Okay.
We'll see. Omi and the Wake. Did you enjoy that?
Yeah, I thought that was really good. And I have really... regardless of some of Blackthorne's attitudes and comments towards Omi, I thought his character development, that's the thing, is that none of these characters are single in dimension. They are giving us even the ones that are like, oh, he's kind of a little bit of a shit stain, or he's a weird guy who boils people, but suddenly all of them are multi-dimensional. And so Omi talking about his friend and speaking up in this sort of august company of all these other people, he's just a kid from a village. He's like no better than a mayor, and suddenly he's at the center table. It was a really incredible moment for his character. I really loved it.
I think he's going through a lot of character growth.
Totally.
Over the course of this series. I think he really was an awful person at the start of this. Very opportunistic. And I'm not saying he's not now, but he's certainly learning that actions have consequences.
Yeah.
Shall we talk about Lady Ochiba?
Yes, let's do that.
So Ishido says, babe, I see no one but you.
I worship you.
You could see she got the ick when he did that.
Totally.
She was like, oh, interesting. And of course you have Daioin. Oh man, am I pronouncing that one right?
I think it's pretty good. That's pretty close.
Daioin.
Yeah.
Saying he's nothing and he comes from nothing. Yikes.
That was a like, talk about, the sense of nobility and aristocracy and sort of being better than others. It really smacked in that moment of, oh yeah, he will never be one of us, no matter what. Yeah. So it's interesting to wonder what her choice is then to then go ahead with the marriage. What did she decide in that moment?
I don't know if she is. I don't know if she is in the end.
But she, so there she is. She's facing her own mortality in that moment as she's watching her first consort's, grandmother, wife. I don't know how to describe
her
the
sister
relationship.
Wife.
Yes, her sister wife. There you go. Brother, uncle, sister, wife.
Next week on TLC.
Well, I've been watching a lot of Res Dogs, and it's very interesting how they do this. There was a whole episode about a brother uncle just recently, and it's like, what's his relationship? I don't know. He's my brother. He's my cousin brother, or something like that. I forget what it is. But these fuzzy lines, it doesn't matter. We're connected. How you put up whatever labels you want on it. Anyway, what did she take from that moment of if her enemy is fear and she hides all the time, and seeing this woman who's known her for a long time, and there's a lot of complexity in the relationship, what did she take away from that, and how did that affect her motivation to ultimately accept Ishido's proposal? It's interesting. I don't know what to make of it.
I don't know either, especially after Dayoin. I'm really trying, guys. Yeah. After Dayoin asks her to release the hostages and dies, she, for a second, she does the whole crying over her thing. But then she just really puts herself together, puts this mask on. And it made me wonder, was she ever feeling grief?
Mm-hmm.
Wait, is she just a sociopath and she was just doing the act because she's supposed to be mourning right now? Or is she just so traumatized that she's forced to hide behind these masks once, she's done her duty?
She's got 128K folded fence. It's not 8, it's 100.
Yeah.
She is really deep in there. And I think that was a beautiful scene because she came without her robes, without her makeup, with her hair she's not in her usual state, and she's very raw and authentic in that moment. And then once she composed it, I think she did have a real moment of grief.
Okay.
But that was a moment, but then she was like, oh, that's weakness. I got to go back into
give herself the ick.
Yeah.
Oh no.
And go back into her whole, composed self. So,
well, we'll just have to see, because she's just so obscured in her motivations right now that I just can't read her.
But dangerous, extremely dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of dangerous in terms of hairstyles, Alvito, other Alvito.
His hat fits perfectly. It's like
so he's got this weird interaction with Blackthorne towards the beginning of the episode. He's like, hey, you're supposed to live in the castle, right? He's like, well, and Blackthorne's, of course, like, give me this. I actually wanted coal. I didn't want wood. But the best part of that, I think, is just this prediction of the cold welcome of his crew, right? You're going to wear that to go see your crew.
Yeah. Yeah.
Loved it. And can I just say, on the whole thing with meeting the crew, in the book, they give him a warm welcome. It's like he just showed up to the party.
Okay.
And it's so different in a good way. I think it's good to have him be in this uneasy place of, I don't have a home anymore.
Right.
So I really like that.
Yeah, but this othering that, he's in between worlds now, right? He can never truly be Japanese, nor can he ever really go back.
Yeah.
I mean, the moment he gets a whiff of his crew, he's utterly disgusted.
Right. Well, it's interesting because another big change they made from the book is that at this point, Blackthorne, he's not fluent in Japanese, but he speaks enough Japanese to be able to speak in basically broken Japanese. Mm-hmm. He can use things basically without articles, without proper grammar, and make himself understandable. And Mariko even says, you're very understandable now, even if you're not, a perfect speaker.
Right.
In this, he's he knows a few phrases, but he's really not had to learn a lot of Japanese in this series. And I wonder why they did that. Is it to make him feel more ostracized from the Japanese and maybe more reliant on Mariko?
It tells the story well, I guess, to go in that direction to because if he was so good at picking it up and he did have a real natural gift, we would then think that would recenter him in some different ways. And it would make him maybe a little bit less believable.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we see him struggling and working through it, even though he's getting it and he's got a couple of phrases down. If he were much more fluid, I think it would be a less credible performance. It would be a less credible character in this show.
Yeah, I think they would have had to extend some of the timelines.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
And, because the book does have longer timelines. It's like, okay, you spent a few months over here doing this. That's not,
which is crazy because they could have taken this as a 3-season, 10 episode, 3-season.
Aren't you glad they didn't?
Yes.
I'm glad they
didn't.
I'm glad they didn't. This is a tight show. It has a beginning, middle, and end. We're not doing a million seasons of The Walking Dead here.
I don't want him to fluff it up, but it's so good that I don't want it to end. But it's so good that I love the fact that they have compressed it into, it's an incredible work of art.
Yeah, right. You have to ask yourself, right, how much of the goodness is because they did a good compression of it.
Exactly. And yet I am so enchanted with their talent and skill and the writing and the acting that I don't want it to end. So that's why I'm conflicted.
Right. So we've got this scene where he's going to Toranaga. He says, I failed to get you the Christian daimyos and the Christian regents. And I love Toranaga here. He's like, don't let him speak Japanese anymore. He's not trustworthy to speak our tongue, which I don't know. It's kind of weird. Like, you're giving Mariko now a chance to edit what he says, which Mariko did a lot of editing this episode, I got to say.
I loved this inversion, or I don't know, whatever they did with this, where Mariko, who is editing and not as reliable, where Alvito is trying his best to be as accurate as possible, but yet he's with he's not a trusted vassal. He's part of this foreign power that has its own objectives and financial motivations. So he comes from a suspect quarter where Mariko is supposed to be a trusted vassal, but she's playing fast and loose with translations where he's being perfect. I love the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then what an insult. And Nate was our resident Japanese historian, was on the Discord saying as an insult, not even a backhanded, it's an open fist, open hand slap across the face that you are no longer worthy of speaking our language in front of me. And I know you speak perfect Japanese. Like that is a huge slapdown.
I'm going to give you my tinfoil hat theory though, which is that the actor didn't speak good enough Japanese to do an impassioned speech in it. And they were like, okay, let's figure out a reason for him to speak in English, fake Portuguese.
Right.
Because we need him to be able to do this impassioned speech about how he should ally with Ishido and this and that. Ally with Ochiba. I misspoke. Yeah. But yeah, he's trying to say, go figure it out, guys. Go have a little powwow. Why don't you go prepare tea for her?
Big theater this is Toranaga's big stage here, sending him back, report Absolutely. What you've seen here. And it's interesting again, and I pointed this out at the top of the episode, when Hiromatsu is there and he's saying, well, you could form this allegiance and do this kind of stuff. So he's giving him his opinion. And in that same spot later in the episode, he's giving his opinion and it costs him his life.
Right.
And it's just a beautiful little couplet in there, rhyming couplet there.
Yep. And then I just wanted to quickly joke about his new lovely neighbors. This actor, I forgot his name, but he's doing an amazing job doing this subtle face drop of, oh, look, who's that? The neighbors? Oh, okay, hi. I think they're courtesans. What?
Perfect Toranaga screw, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to put the church and the Willow World next to each other.
Yeah, we'll get you a church. Don't worry about it. Prime land, prime real estate. Primo real estate, father. Mariko, let's talk about her. We kind of talked about T already.
Mm-hmm.
But she didn't want death. She just wanted freedom from Buntaro.
Yeah. Yep. And it's got to be She was, and this was an arranged marriage. She didn't choose him.
But was it who was the one who told her, like, your dad wanted you to marry him so that you would be free and you would be safe?
Right.
It was Toranaga, right?
Wasn't it? Yeah, it was. It was. He wanted to get you away from there. And it's Hiramatsu's son, so it's right. They're trying to form different political alliances amongst each other. But then Buntaro, like, where, we've seen him be abusive. He's an amazing samurai fighter. He has incredible tea, prowess in the tea ceremony. He has emotion. Right. Can samurai cry, or samurai allowed to show that kind of emotion? Like, he broke for a second there at the end of that scene. And it was so human. And that gut punch, I can feel that gut punch of, oh, hey, I've just opened up my heart to you. And the other person's like, no.
I mean, being a cruel
lemon
person,
in my eye.
Yeah, I mean, being a cruel person, being the villain of somebody else's story doesn't prevent you from having emotions yourself, right? And just like we look at, and I'm not going to compare him to like Jaime Lannister wholly, but because I don't think he has this redemption arc in front of him. But the way that Game of Thrones was able to sort of make us root for Jaime Lannister at times and root for different characters, or even just root for a character in the moment. Now, I wasn't rooting for Buntaro here because I didn't want Mariko to die, but you do feel badly for him, and that's okay. That means we're good humans because we feel empathy, even for bad people.
Good point.
Anyway,
and,
go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say as well. Oh, I forgot my point. Carry on. I'll pick it up.
I was just going to say that I really love the pushback on the biggest critique of Clavel. I brought it up before, but this whole everybody's suicidal in Japan, this is the biggest part of samurai culture. I think it might have been Abby who brought it up. Somebody brought up in our Discord or in the feedback that, like, this was really a post World War II idea because of kamikaze fighters and the overall trajectory of that war. But this was not a historical accuracy.
Interesting.
So I'm really glad they fixed that, and that they did it in a way that felt like it was really a direct refutation of Clavel's thesis.
Right.
Very good.
Yeah, and again, just being able to take source material and elevate it to something new is great. And I remember what I wanted to say about Buntaro, which is that, again, even though we feel this empathy and this emotion, and we can be fascinated at his skills in other areas, he's not emotionally intelligent, whereas Mariko is. She's damn near as smart as Toranaga in terms of figuring out people and their motivations and understanding what the clockwork of human psychology. And he just plainly can't see what it is. And so it's not only like, hey, I don't want to spend 1,000 years with you in death or life. I just don't want to spend time with you.
Right.
He can't see that. He doesn't see that at all. He doesn't understand that there's no there with them.
Right.
And it was just such an amazing construction of a marriage at the end of its lifespan.
I really wonder what he's going to do from here, because I feel like he's the loose cannon now, even more than Blackthorne.
Well, yeah, and I think Alicia and I talked about this on the quick podcast that we did the other day, which is, if Crimson Sky goes down, is he going to be the guy who's at the tip of the spear, just in this sort of nothing? Yeah. Well, he doesn't have his dad anymore, doesn't have his wife anymore. What does he have left to lose? And we know that he is an accomplished swordsman.
Right.
So,
right. Yeah, and I really do love later. I brought it up in Toranaga's section, but let's talk about it now quick. Is this whole idea of him being denied death because he denied Mariko so long. Love it.
And the Hiramatsu, the way he said it to him, he's like, in my head canon was, okay, I'm your dad and I'm your lord, but that, what happens in your household and what happens between you and your wife, that's your business. It's not my business to say anything. But here I am at my death's door, and fuck you, pardon my French, for treating your wife that way all this long. This is my rebuke to you you've been a bad husband.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And he knows that, right? I mean, he knows that he raised a little man as far as a husband goes.
Yeah, he's a tremendous man in many ways as a warrior, but in terms of a well-rounded person, he's missing some pieces there.
Right. So we need to address one more point about Mariko. What's she ready for, and what's on the paper?
This is her Peregrine Falcon moment, flying high in the sky.
I thought you were going to say Peregrine Took, because I'm just so used to Lord of the Rings at this point.
At the beginning of the season, when Toranaga is talking to his son, doesn't he say that about how, she flies high and uses the sun? And so he's sending her, with some sort of camouflage, where nobody's going to see her target and at what velocity. She's coming so fast that they're not going to see the impact. And by the time that they do, it's going to be too late, and he's going to be inside of Osaka, and it's going to happen. I'm so excited for it.
Well, speaking of things that are moving fast with a high velocity, Hiramatsu's head would be one of them. And we've got to talk about him.
Right. Well, that's bad. That's being a bad second, because you're supposed to leave it so that the head doesn't roll off.
Well,
but it cuts far enough.
So is a little distracted. He's got marital problems. Give him a break. His dad also just denied him death, so I don't think he's happy with him either. I kind of just want to debate you and Alicia.
Okay, please.
I think that Hiramatsu believed that Toranaga was ready to surrender. I don't think he was in on the theater.
I don't think okay. It's so subtle and complex, because when they walk out of the meeting with Alvido, he says, "Well, the old man's going to fight. Like, there's no way that he would send that, Alvido back, blah, blah, blah." And then so when they're in that meeting and he's seeing the three generals, willing to commit seppuku because they don't want to, like, you as a lord, you're dishonoring what we have served for you as your lord. So Hiramatsu puts himself in that position, and I think he's anticipating Toranaga, and he's also deflecting all of the other, so nobody else has to do it. He's taking it on himself. Mm-hmm. And I don't think, do you think that we thought it was pre-planned?
Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought you thought that Hiramatsu sort of understood his role here.
He did, but it wasn't pre-planned. It was emerged in the moment.
Okay. All right. I buy that more than I do it was, a scripted play.
Yeah. Okay, Hiramatsu, I'm going to say this, and then you say that, and then you take out your knife and you stab yourself in the belly.
Make sure you sharpen your swords.
Yeah, exactly. No, it wasn't that at all.
Yeah.
He was reading the room. Hiramatsu was reading the room, and it was going like, oh crap, like, we can't, I know that Toranaga has a plan. He hasn't told me the plan, but there's no way that his plan's going to work if these three generals and everybody else in the room starts, pulling out their swords. So I'm going to pull all that energy to me, and I'm going to do it on behalf of everybody else. Mm-hmm. It's just kind of like, I mean, these two guys have known each other for so many years, and it was the only play. Mm-hmm. And I think Toranaga saw, I think it's interesting now that we're talking about it. I think Hiramatsu saw it before Toranaga, and he stepped in, and then Toranaga saw it as well. And so then they were like, okay, we're locked in, and this is where we're going. And there's nowhere out. There's no way off this track.
Right. Interesting. All right. Yeah. I buy that more. I appreciate you selling that point for me.
Yeah, good. I'm glad, because it was an incredible scene, incredible acting, an incredible plot device. It completely blew me away.
So we're up to Blackthorne and Yabushige. So Blackthorne has recently been freed from Toranaga's service and banished to the commoners area, it feels like. this Hatamoto, normally would be in the castle, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that was a question that Alicia and I debated a little bit was, is he still Hatamoto? Is he still a Hadimoto?
I think so, because he didn't break his oath or anything, right? Toranaga just said, I don't have any more need of you. I mean, look, he broke his oath later.
He gave him the raspberry in the middle of a high-level diplomatic meeting.
Yeah, that's true.
And
crimson horse shit.
So, but I don't think that even if his Hatamoto status is in question, he was still granted a mini fiefdom, right? He was still given a plot of land and that kind of stuff. And Fuji, and I believe Mariko says that, Fuji's back and she's still got to manage your affairs and stuff.
I mean, I could be wrong, but my impression of this world is if you're not going to be a Hatamoto anymore, your options are two. You shave your head and become a monk, or you commit seppuku. Those are literally the only two options.
But it wasn't like Toranaga said, you're no longer Hatamoto. He just got mad at his lord and walked out. And everybody was okay, well, the barbarian is being a silly barbarian. So
yeah.
I mean, even Toranaga's brother was like, huh. And then he went back to negotiating. He was like, whatever, barbarian.
Sayaki was funny. I mean, I was uneasy about that guy from the beginning, but he did have a good humor about him.
Yeah, he was funny. Sayaki. I've been avoiding saying his name. I don't want to make people drink. Sayaki.
Well, that's all right. I mean, somebody's got to have a good time.
That's right.
So let's talk about the big, I'm not at home here. See, this whole, he goes to see his friends, and the minute he sees them, he's like, oh man, it stinks. And he looks down and he sees somebody and he's like, yeah, I don't think I want to mess with this. Pilot? And he's like, oh. Just seeing somebody you don't want to see at Applebee's the night before Thanksgiving.
And his shoulders drop a little bit and he's like, shit, I can't just walk away. Like I'm caught. It was really good body acting from Cosmo Jarvis.
Yeah, it was. And like I said in the intro, this is wildly different from the book.
Yeah. I think I heard in the book they spend a lot more time with this scene.
There's like a chapter basically, or at least a large portion of a chapter, where he's just in there and he's like, guys, don't worry. We're going to attack the black ship together and everything's going to be amazing. And his ship's already in Edo in the book.
Oh,
so
really?
It's like, yeah. And well, like he hadn't seen it. It wasn't like sitting there for him to, mope about like it is in the show. It was already in Edo and had been taken care of already. And his crew had been working on it. The Japanese had been working on it with the guidance of the crew, telling them what needed to be done.
Okay.
So it had actually been like completely prepared already, basically. And so it's a much different situation. They're like, oh, we're so happy to see you. Oh, missed you, buddy. Thought you were dead. And he sees all of them, right? He goes in. And but anyway, the point is, it's a much more warm welcome in the book.
Right.
And I think that was changed in the show primarily because they wanted to up the pressure on Blackthorne to feel like he had no home.
Agreed.
And I think if he had a warm welcome, he wouldn't have been going to Yabashige the next day.
And I think it's a better story for it. The original story, is all about this foreigner in a strange land who's so clever and, spitting in the face of fate and making his way in the world, where here it's like, no, this world is very different. And I'm not as good as I am on my feet to actually confront the differences between our two cultures is a much graver and bigger thing, to the point that he's actually kind of stuck here. Will he ever see his, wife and children again? Will he ever see parts of home again? And I think the way that they played it out this time, the alienation that he feels and the trapped between two worlds, but not trapped. Like he's like, I'm not really Japanese, and I don't want to go back and be stinky with these guys.
He's going to be walking through England with a clothespin on his nose.
Right? What did he say? Is like, it smells like Highgate at low tide, or I forget what his line was.
Oh, it's bad. It's bad. Yeah, I mean, remember in the beginning, he's like, "Don't give me a bath. I'm gonna get what's that fake
flux
disease
or scurvy,
the flux,
or pox, or
the flux." And that was I guess this was a real thing. Like people thought if you bathed too much, you got sick from it.
Right.
Which is insane.
The humors and all these different ideas that we used to have about human health.
Right. So the Japanese were ahead of their time on that one, and he's gotten used to it. He's like, "Oh, it's actually nice to not smell like shit all the time."
Once he realizes the refinements and the comforts and the luxury that this lifestyle affords him, why would you go back? It's a nice hot bath. I feel relaxed. I've got good food. My breath doesn't stink. It really is a bonus.
Yeah. Well, this is going to push him right into the arms of Yabushige, of course. But Yabushige, you can see he considers it. He's like, no, I can't do it. I'm too deep in with Toranaga. I can't go accept this offer now. But I love Mariko's reaction because it almost felt like I was playing a video game and I got a prompt that says like, Mariko didn't like that, or your relationship with Mariko changed.
That's funny.
It's like Baldur's Gate, right?
Right. I thought it was more Omi shooting Yabushige a look. Like, are you serious, dude? Are you actually being enchanted by this disgusting barbarian? It was pretty funny because he really did. He was like, oh yeah, that's not a bad idea. Oh yeah, this Blackthorne guy. Yeah. I mean, they are spiritually bonded. The moment that Yabushige pulled himself up, we got pulled up from the cliffs, and Blackthorne, I forget what he said. It was a pretty funny little situation though, but he sits there and he's looking at him, and their fates, I think at that point, were intertwined, even though they're ebbing and flowing away from each other at different points. They are, as I think Toranaga rightly points out, they're both birds of the same feather.
Yeah.
They're both short-term survivalists, right? Yep. They're gonna eat what they're gonna catch. They're gonna kill what they can catch, and they're gonna eat it. They're not thinking of a larger picture. They're not looking at the strategic. He's like, oh well, we could just get in my ship and sail away. It's like, okay, what then? Oh, I'll attack the black ship. Okay, what then? Like, what does that mean? You're going to actually provoke a war? Even a greater war? I mean, if you start cutting off the Portuguese cash flow from here, you're going to piss them off. And that's going to...
Yeah.
So...
Well, that's something that I don't remember if this was in the book of the show now, but Toranaga's so concerned with this pitch to take the black ship because... how are they going to get their silks from China now? This is a major trade disruption. This is how they get and they say that in the intro of the show of like how this trade works, which is that China wouldn't trade with Japan. So the Portuguese are the intermediaries, and that's how they get all their, goods from China that they really need to survive.
And charging them on both ends, charging the transaction.
Right. Oh, the Portuguese are being awful about it. Yeah. But my point is, Toranaga understands that, like, sure, we might get a better deal with the English and Dutch, not guaranteed. But it's going to take a decade to figure out the trade logistics.
Yeah, right. And negotiate all the treaties. And before the cash actually starts flowing, you've got to have at least one or a couple of ships going through.
Right.
Yeah, it's disrupting a supply chain.
Right.
We have a little experience when that happens.
The Suez Canal.
Wasn't that? I think that anniversary was just like a few weeks ago.
I think I talked about the Suez Canal on the Halo podcast, actually.
Okay. Oh, nice.
Funny. This is now a recurring Lorehounds topic.
We need to mark that in our annual calendar. For sure.
The anniversary. But so, John, the point is they can't just go on and attack the black ship. It's a stupid idea.
No. But I was going to ask you a question.
Go ahead. Am I ready?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, who knows? Like, where for you does cracking your head on a rock rate? Is it
Ugh.
higher or lower than being eaten by dogs or being boiled alive? Because Yabushige's got to know. He's keeping his book.
Well, hold on now. Is it on like the quality of the death?
Right.
You're saying like
The
how much
poetic
I would
nature?
enjoy dying? Is that
Do
what
we need
you're
a
saying?
Yabushige scale for
No
meaningful
more
death?
scales. I'd say if I have to pick one of the three, I'd probably pick dying like Nagakado. Like, yeah, it's painful, but it's not as painful as being boiled alive or eaten
By dogs alive. Yeah.
I think that this would be the preferable way. Thanks very much.
I just think that the fact that he's got a death book that he's ranking these different ways and he's thinking
write
like
that down.
he's so, samurai and lords are supposed to be good with poetry and tea ceremonies and the theater and all of these different things beyond just swordsmanship and battle. And Yabushige is studying death and examining the poetry of death in a very visceral and direct way. And I'm here for it. I love this guy. He's an absolute king.
He's a funny guy. An awful guy, but a funny guy. So Yabashige is eventually sent to deliver the cannons as Toranaga and Hiramatsu, and everybody keeps saying the whole episode. But then Blackthorne decides to come and is invited by Yabashige. Of course, Mariko is sent along with a mysterious note. What's going on?
Yeah, well, this is where we're looking at her Peregrine Falcon. This is the beginning of her attack, right? This is the beginning of her mission.
Yep.
And it has to. I don't know what the actual target is. Like, where's the point of impact? But it's certainly going to destabilize the regions.
Mm-hmm.
And is she being aimed at Ochiba? Okay, now I'm in my head about it. Lady Ochiba. Oh God, now I've done it. I've really done myself.
No, I think that's the right way. I think.
Okay, is it? Okay. I'm all mixed up. Everybody drink. I think she's aimed at her ultimately. Like that's the chink in the armor that he can get through. He's got an arrow with. Well, didn't they get Smaug that way? With the wasn't there a chink in the arrow in the armor? And
the one arrow got the chink in there.
Yeah, so I think this is Mariko. I think she's this arrow aimed at the armor here.
Right. The next arrow is Mariko. So,
yes.
but who's? Hold on now. You're saying that Mariko is going to put the hole in the armor, or that where's the hole now? If not,
yeah, I don't think we see it. I don't think it's been given to us. I think we've got all of the setup for it, but I don't think that we have I don't think we know exactly where it is. She's the arrow. And aimed at whatever weakness that Toranaga can see that we can't see.
Right. Well,
and that's going to be a fun boat ride.
It is going to be a fun
with
boat
Yabushige and Blackthorne.
And when they get to Osaka, I think it's going to be a
kill-tacular.
I had my Halo soundboard up still.
What was that?
That's the Halo announcer. We recorded Halo
the
last podcast on here, and I still had my thing going on.
Game over.
Yeah,
okay,
we got the whole thing. Don't worry about it.
Pretty funny. One thing I wanted to address with about Blackthorne and Yabushige was that when Blackthorne is making his initial appeal, Yabushige is open to it. He's thinking about it. He's like, oh, this is not a bad idea. And, obviously that gets turned away, but then later they come together. The thing is, I think Mariko's seeing this. I don't see that Yabushige sees this, but I certainly think Toranaga sees this, that Blackthorne's crew certainly sees this, that he is a user. He's going to use the relationships that are in his life for his whatever his short-term goals are. It's sort of, one thing after the next. Oh, well, we'll get through the channel, and we'll get to the Japans, and then we'll attack the Black Ship. He's clawing his way sort of one rung at a time up whatever imaginary ladder he has. But if you're useful to him, he will use you. And then when you're not useful to him anymore, he's moving on. And this is a theory.
I don't know about that. I don't think that Blackthorne discards people as quickly as you're suggesting.
Okay.
I think I might be biased because of the book, where he is often thinking about, well, how do I get my men home? Right. Because I pledged to take the ships and the men home. And
that's interesting, because
I'll take back anything that I can.
Because in this, he's always trying to get his crew back, because his crew are means to the ends of the ship. Mm-hmm. And then the ship is his means to attack the Portuguese and the Catholics. Right. That goal, where, we don't get him much more of his interior dialogue in terms of why is he really care about his crew?
I think he does, but like I said, I might be biased because I get his internal monologue in the book.
Right, but and I think in the book it sounds like it's more clear.
Yeah, and I do think that even in the show, he doesn't discard people. Like, if he were the way you're describing, I think he would be very callous towards Fuji.
Mm-hmm.
Things like that.
True.
And I think he is kind where he needs. He's kind to
That's
people
a good
generally,
point.
Unless they wrong him, he's kind to people.
That's a good counter. The Fuji situation is a good counterpoint, because he does show her an honest, true moment of tendership, and he does feel bad about the gardener. After the earthquake, he sort of touches her hand while she's getting, her wounds tended to her, and then he goes and he moves the rock. So, okay, so maybe my theory that he's toxic isn't. Maybe he's not. Well, again, he's not. No character in the show is one dimensional. They're all multidimensional.
He has selfish aspects, I think.
Agreed.
Okay. And as do we all, right? We all have moments where we can be a little selfish.
Yeah.
So Toranaga, the man of the hour, who I think this show honestly has become a show about him.
Okay.
A show about him and a show about Mariko as the main characters. I think Blackthorne, honestly, is closer in character scope to Yabashige and Omi. Maybe not Omi. Omi's a little smaller, but you know what I mean. This is not the Blackthorne show, and I'm glad, because I think it's more interesting this way. I know we've already basically debated the illness a little bit, but I personally think he was not faking it because of his morning coughing. But I do think it helped him with his situation. And perhaps that's part of his plan, right? Because we know that he's really good at improvising and using his situation to his advantage. So if he wakes up with a cold, he's like, all right, cool. When we go to council, I'm going to make sure that it looks like I'm sick, that I'm being helped in.
Mm-hmm. And if you're in that boxed in situation and your spirit is down and it's so wet in Anjiro, it all makes sense that it plays into the defeated man picture. Oh, they've strategically outmaneuvered him, and look, he's sick and he's weak now, and he probably couldn't even defend himself with his swords if he wanted to. Right? That's it. It's like he's limping to attract the prey to come get him when he's not. It's a great ruse. It's a great ruse.
Yeah, I agree.
Lies, deception, as Saw Gerrera might say.
The manipulation of Blackthorne and Yabashige, speaking of deception, brilliantly done, right? Just driving them into the arms of each other.
Wait, can you do Saw Gerrera in John Blackthorne's voice saying lies,
deception?
Anyway, back to the point.
Well, I think that it's really brilliant the way they've written this show, because early on you have the small deception, the small manipulations from Toranaga to Yabashige. You have Toranaga sending Hiramatsu to basically pressure Yabashige into gifting him the Erasmus and Blackthorne's crew. But you also have the situation where Yabashige, quote unquote, takes it upon himself to rescue Blackthorne. You have, Toranaga kind of boxing him in with the offer of Ishido, and he's done a really good job of subtly manipulating Yabushige all season to where I believe Toranaga feels confident that he can predict Yabushige.
Yeah. Agreed. Absolutely. Yabushige is always, well, speaking of using people, he's never outlived his usefulness.
Mm-hmm.
He's always been a very potent ally to have. And it was actually probably worked to his strategic advantage to have a little little communication channel between Ishido and him, where he could make little moves or drop little comments, knowing that Yabushige would send that back, and then that would confuse or confound Ishido and the regents, and vice versa. So it's not only keeping Yabushige in check, but actually using him as a tool on the chessboard, and being able to induce different results and different reactions from them. So yeah. It's been from the moment when he called him up to the battlement and he's like, "Oh, watch the sunset with me." Yabushige knew his number was there. He was like, "Oh, okay, well, you're going to kill me." Right. And I like the fact that neither Toranaga nor him, they play this little game, but when they really are confronting it, there's no pretense about it.
Right.
There's no bullshit and smoke and mirrors stuff. It's like, oh yeah, you're gonna kill me. It's like, no, you're useful to me still. So hang out, watch the sunset for me, and then we'll go from here. I like the practicality of their of the relationship, of the nature of their relationship.
Right. So Yabushige, I think Toranaga can be pretty confident that he's gonna do what Toranaga expects him to do. But do you think that Toranaga has become overconfident about the Anjin? Because I think that Blackthorne might be too wild card for Toranaga to predict in the way that he predicts Yabushige's movements.
Is that not exactly what he wants, though?
But that doesn't make sense, right? Because wild card could do anything.
Sure.
Like he knows that Yabushige is going to accept the offer and follow the instructions if he thinks that there's power involved.
Right.
I don't think he fully understands Blackthorne's motivations, because I don't think Blackthorne understands Blackthorne's motivations. Like Blackthorne is lost right now. He's completely lost. True. He doesn't even know what he wants. Does he even, in the end, is he even going to care about his fight with the Portuguese, or does he just want to live a happy life with Rodriguez?
Can you imagine those two on the same ship together? Oh man. Yeah, I think your point is well taken, that Blackthorne doesn't know what Blackthorne wants. He doesn't have Mariko. He doesn't have the black ship. He doesn't have his own ship. He doesn't have his crew. Like we talked about, he's got none of this stuff. But I think if Toranaga is as good as a tactician and strategist and tactician, right, two different skills, he's got to be able to adjust in the moment while he's got his grand schemes running, plans within plans, as the Benny Gesserit might say, mixing lots of different IPs here.
Right.
And he's got to be able to, he's very good at responding tactically to new situations. And Blackthorne really is a wild card, and he's been a wild card from the beginning, and it's constantly provided leverage and area. It's opened up areas where there weren't going to be any openings. And Toranaga is strategic, his clarity of vision and his ability to respond is so good that he can take advantage of these things. So even if Blackthorne is a chaos agent, he's a chaos monkey, running around, Toranaga's nimble enough on his feet that he can take advantage of all of, if not most of, these opportunities that Blackthorne creates. So
I like that. That. Let's talk about Toranaga's treatment of Mariko now.
Are you ready for your mission? That was so good. They could have ended the season on that. Like if we were going for a multi-season show,
yeah,
that could have been the final shot. right?
I was waiting for that to be the final shot of the episode when it happened.
And then there were still, and then there were commercial, and then I looked at the timeline, and I was like, "Wow, there's still like a whole bunch of time left."
Yeah, see, I couldn't figure out if it was going to be like a Disney credit where it's like 13 minutes of, because now I'm used to Disney's stupid credits where
God, the credits that roll on forever, the Bad Batch credits.
I know. All of the Star Wars credits are absolutely insane. The Marvel ones are pretty bad too.
Yeah.
And I want everybody to get credit, but how is it possible that this many people worked on this show?
It's ridiculous. Talk about a dark season, Bad Batch this year. Boy.
I'm not caught up yet. I've through about 5 or 6 episodes.
Got it.
So I will catch up before the end of the season.
Anyway, back to Mariko.
Yep.
Yeah. He's been waiting for her to have the clarity of vision that he wants her to have. And I think I want to save it maybe for my favorite scene. There's one of my favorite scenes I'll just talk about it now, is when she has her light bulb moment when she's talking to Toranaga, and she's so affected by seeing suddenly all of the plans that have been, that she's been blind to. She's so impacted by it. She just sinks down to her knees. She's like, dude, oh my God. Like, I didn't realize. And now I'm seeing it all. And I can see how you've been manipulating and moving. And I just love the fact that Anna Sawai knew in that moment that it was such a momentous moment that the only thing a human being could do is to, sort of not, there's no chairs. So she goes down on her knees, obviously.
She said, Ned Stark's head just rolled.
Exactly. It was so good. It was so good. And this idea, but he's manipulating her, right? He's manipulating everybody for hopefully justifiable ends, but it's still manipulation and gaslighting. So it's amazing. It's a delicious stew of plans within plans. He's just lost his best friend. He just lost his son. And now he's sending Mariko, who is like, he's known since she was a little girl, into the, one of the most dangerous places on Earth in that moment.
Yeah, I really wonder if this plan's going to work. I hope it does. I really do. I hope that they have an amazing time and everyone lives happily ever after. But I don't know how the story ends. So what's he doing with the church and the courtesans? Is this just trying to keep them in check by keep putting them next to each other? Or is this just having a little fun?
I think he's having a little fun.
He just wants to be able to walk down the street and watch the scowls back and forth.
Well, lots of souls to save, going in and out of the Willow World there. So,
give them a brochure coming out.
They're synergistic, right? They're synergistic. It's like,
the play The Book of Mormon?
Yes, but I've never seen it, but I know about it, a lot about it.
Well, you don't have to see it for this joke. I went to see it, and in the program, it's great. But in the program, there's an ad from the Mormon Church that says, "You've seen the Book of Mormon. Now learn what we're really about."
That's awesome. Well played.
Like, this is what Toranaga's placement is going to do with the church and the courtesans.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're in need of escape or solace, your soul or your physical being, you just go to this part of town and they got you, whether you need it in a metaphysical sense or in a physiological sense, you're covered.
Yep. You'll be on your knees either way. All right. Let's move on to,
he's back.
Let's move on to Nagakato and Hiramatsu being thanked for time because there was a
double kill.
And that really bought Toranaga time to plan and scheme and hire Mariko to cause problems.
Right. See, I don't think he could have sent Mariko in had they left straight from Anjiro. So he's every time the situation changes, every time the tactical situation changes, he's recalibrating and setting up new plans and looking for new opportunities. And so being able to push Blackthorne out, you're like quasi Hatamoto. Did I just say that? And your Yabushige is disgusted, and okay, so that works. Okay, so now Mariko, right? She's on board. Like he's constantly scheming and moving his pieces on the chessboard around in response.
Absolutely.
And I think that this death, giving him time, he's going to use every advantage. He says that I won't waste it.
Right. I think he would have figured out something without Nagakato's death. I think
Absolutely.
It legitimately did help him, and he never would have ordered it or made it happen. But he is going to be like, you know what? It happened, and we're going to use whatever we can get from it.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, let's take a quick break. When we get back, we're going to talk about our favorite moments.
And then we got a lot of feedback.
And we're back. David, let's talk about our favorite moments in the show. Can you start me off?
Yeah, I got the one already, which was the light bulb moment. And I guess I don't know, all of these. My other one was Yabushige's death book.
Okay.
I think that one. And then my last one was Mariko's comment to Blackthorne. Did you want me to translate that, or was that for me?
Yeah, that was really good.
It was so blunt and straightforward, and it really caught me surprised. I was like, "Huh? What?" was,
especially, I mean, I know that they kind of, warmed back up after this, but this thing earlier on where she goes, "From now on, the only words we'll share will be from others' lips."
Yeah.
And now she's just like, "Do you want me to translate that for you?"
Mm-hmm.
Did I stutter?
What about you? What do you got?
Yeah, so I basically hinted at these the whole time, but the tea ceremony was a big one for me. I thought it was really beautiful, really well done. It made me feel a little otherworldly, and I wasn't even having tea. So now I have to go prepare tea for my wife.
Nice.
Blackthorne's cold welcome was another one for me. I really enjoyed the twist on what they did in the book.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's honestly, it makes more sense when he's been living with, I guess we don't know the exact time, but he's been living as a Hatamoto, at least partially, as you said, a Quasimodo, like he's the Hunchback of Notre Dame. And he's not going to feel at home anymore with these people, right? He's going to be like, wow, did I used to live like this? And that's not going to be good. So now he's in a weird, awkward spot.
Right.
But I also really loved Alvito's neighbors, and the face drop was so subtle and so good. I really like this actor who's playing Father Alvito. He's very funny.
The acting has been really superb all around. Not a bad performance amongst them.
Totally agree. So let's get into listener feedback. If you have feedback for us, you can, of course, write into Shogun@thelorehounds.com. You can go to thelorehounds.com and access our contact page where you can leave us a voicemail or write a contact form entry. Or you can tag us on the Discord and say, hey, David, John, I just really want to have this read out loud, but I'm not feeling going to my email inbox today. That's fine. Just let us know. Okay, so let's start off with a voicemail from Abby, who sent it via the contact page.
Hello, everyone. This is Abby from Edo with my last input on pronunciations. I need to stress that I appreciate you making an effort to get them right, when more often than not, American podcasters are doggedly insisting on wrongly anglicizing everything, which, if it's the case of faulty ear to tongue coordination, I could understand. But then they add the twist of making fun of foreigners sounding foreign. And that is just a total lack of self-awareness, right? Anyhow, without much ado, as I think we don't really have new characters popping in at this point, a rehash. Brother of Toranaga is named Saeki. Nobutatsu. Saeki. That very same Toranaga is played by actor and executive producer Sanada Hiroyuki. Sanada Hiroyuki. Mariko is still Mariko, no matter how the showrunner pronounces her name. Really, it shouldn't be that hard. Mariko. Some names you guys already get them right at the first try, and others you struggled with and now you get them correctly, so I will just list them up. Yabushige, Omi, Kiku, Fuji, Gin, Hiromatsu, Buntaro, Ishido, Ochiba, and well, all the region clans, who cares what about them anyway. And now to my episode 8 comments. As the official podcast already delved into the tea ceremony, I would just add as a personal observation that I find the whole experience very stressful. When every detail is very important and every gesture carefully choreographed, what if you miss something or get something wrong? Anyhow, if anyone is interested in how the tea itself tastes, it is very bitter. But any type of tea, green tea, should be tried as is. Westerners tend to add sugar to everything, and that is just a sin against tea. I noticed that Buntaro is getting a lot of pity from the viewers. And sure, as we see him on this show, well, poor guy. I think in an effort to make him likable, the show kind of glossed over the fact that he was physically and emotionally abusive towards Mariko. You notice how he says that they were happy once, and Mariko remembers no such time. Well, good for her to set the record straight, which I might admit Hiromatsu also did with his last words toward him, his last words and his added advice. On that scene with Toranaga, at first watch, I was just as shocked as the rest of them, but on rewatch, you can notice a whole silent conversation going on between those two. And as Kiku said, you just simply need to look harder. What a performance, my. Asano Tadanobu continues to shine as Yabushige. He is truly a chaos agent and brings so much levity. I personally find him a lot more funny than John Blackthorne, occasionally dropping some made-up word that's supposed to be funny. I don't know. Last but not least, I have to thank you for not bringing any weird comparisons to your breakdowns and keeping them lore-bound. I just love it. Also, thanks for being measured and mature in your enthusiasm versus some pods that are, how can I say, charitably bubbly. Okay. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts on the whole episode. Arigatou gozaimasu. Thanks you for the time. Abby, out.
Did we just get called not bubbly? Are we flat?
I think we've been gushing about this show the whole time, but
yeah.
I think I've had like one minor criticism the entire time. But I don't know. Maybe we talk about it in terms of more like facts and grounded, which I would appreciate if that's what you meant, Abby. But thank you for the pronunciation guides, Abby. I know we poke fun, but it's very helpful, genuinely, to get some direct advice on it.
And I think she makes a good point about being self-aware. Mm-hmm. That we're trying. We stumble, we joke, and we laugh a little bit, but it's not out of it's out of a sense of trying to pronounce it correctly, the names correctly. Where I've heard a couple of other podcasts where I was like, oh, ow, that really hurts, and they don't even care, and they just move on. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate the fact that you observe us trying, and we absolutely do appreciate you coaching us. It's a lot more fun when we get to interact with the listeners in this way. And I'm just so appreciative of you sending in your voicemails.
Absolutely. And I want to touch on your other comments, Abby. I think it's very interesting to hear you say the tea ceremony is stressful. That's funny to me, and because it's supposed to distract you from the stresses of life, right?
Right.
And for you, it's just completely insufferable. I'm so sorry to hear that. I do want to try the tea. I got to try this. I do love a good green tea. Without sugar, even I'll have a green tea without sugar. So give me your recommendations for things that I can get in the U.S. Maybe.
Well, that was straight matcha powder, wasn't it? That he was mixing.
Oh, it was not diluted much at all. Yeah. I mean, I like matcha powder for sure. It's good stuff.
I don't know if I've ever had that kind of powdered tea in that way, tea ceremony or not. So that'd be interesting. Interesting that it's not about, that's so delicious and it's hitting my taste buds just in the right way, but it's actually trying to set off an emotional reaction in such a way that it's altering your perspective on the moment and putting you into a different mental headspace and to think about things in a different way. So that's where most of the time, we're drinking tea or coffee to seek some sort of ritual enjoyment.
Mm-hmm. I live near a really good Asian food market, and now I want to go and see if they have legit matcha there this weekend. We'll see.
Give it a try.
But on a more, substantive note, this pity for Buntaro thing.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel pity for Buntaro, David?
I don't feel pity for Buntaro. I feel that we easily judged him as being a clod and a thug and, an abuser, which all of those things are true. But they're showing us that he's a human being. And I think you mentioned it earlier in the podcast. He has an emotional reaction, an authentic emotional reaction to being rejected by somebody he thought he was in love. I think he's in love with the idea of being in love. I don't think he's actually in love with Mariko. And that's just very human. And so I don't pity him, but I can see him as a person who's also deserving of grace and redemption, right? If you do the work and you make things correct and you come correct, then there's a way out of the prison, the cage that you've made for yourself. And I think that they're showing us that he's not just a brute. His emotional reaction to seconding his father, a horrible situation for him to be in. And
he's got the many aspects of every person, right? Every person has good and bad parts of themselves, and emotional and more severed from emotion parts of them.
Yep. And that's what I really appreciate about the show is we're seeing human beings being human. Right. So.
Well, thank you, Abby. Always a pleasure to hear from you. I hope you call in or write in next week.
Yeah, I definitely would love some season. Well, we've got a couple more episodes and then a season wrap up. So keep it coming.
Lore Master and Dunedain and Discord mod Brian 8063. Hi, everyone. Sorry, I need to correct myself. Grammar, it's Dunedain when it's singular. Hi, everyone. I'm making a couple of observations about episode 8. The first you probably covered in depth already on the podcast, but it also struck me, this theme of loyalty. We see sides of it from different characters, Mariko and Hiromatsu. Loyalty never ends, and you must do what you must. Blackthorne. Loyalty is fine. What do you do if loyalty turns senseless and it is suicide? Also Blackthorne. He's loyal to his crew. He lets it go, and he seems willing to let loyalty go. He also sees loyalty to Mariko, and this might be something he won't give up. I haven't finished the book or remember the end of the 1980 miniseries. Omi. He asks if loyalty can be a disservice, a harm really. This was great, as we see the struggle of loyalty and how long it takes to hold on to it. Another aspect that caught my attention.
Can we pause real quick here on loyalty? Because we didn't really talk about it at the top. We were constrained on time, and then we've become unconstrained from time. So we can spend a little bit more time considering this particular theme about loyalty. And I'm trying to think of any other show that we've covered or any shows that I've watched that have actually ever addressed and explored the idea of loyalty. And I find it really interesting. I always felt that loyalty was a pretty simplistic and flat ideal, like you're loyal or you're not. Mm-hmm. And this idea that if you're trapped inside of trapped is I'm already setting conditions on the response here. But if you're in a situation where there is a relationship of loyalty to a very high degree that you put your life on the line, and then you're watching that person you're loyal to make what is, in your opinion, are bad decisions, and you continue to enable it. I think that's what Omi is really struggling with here, is that can that be a harm or a disservice? And I think it's a fascinating question. I've never thought of loyalty in this way. And the way that it's unfolding by the characters just being themselves in the story is really intriguing. And I can't wait to see a little bit more of, because we all are waiting for the moment of Toranaga, throws the theater aside, throws his crutches to the side, and and
he's Gene Wilder in the Willy Wonka movie doing a front flip.
He stands up straight and says, "Attack!" And everybody's like, "Oh, it was a ruse all along. Attack!" That he's really testing their loyalty by not telling them the truth, and it's. And then what do you do when you've been that loyal person? And it's like, yo, dude, you lied to me. You weren't straight with me, and you tested my faith in this relationship. And how do I feel about that now? And what do I do then in the days and the weeks coming for, after that? It's
tough. It's tough. I mean, what do you do if you're a parent and your adult child joins a cult?
Right.
Do you try to get them out of it, or do you let them live their life? Right? Like what's the right thing? What's the loyal thing? What's the trusting thing?
That's an interesting question as a parent. What's my loyalty obligation to my child? Not only to my child, but to society and to my extended family. There'd be a lot of people upset if I weren't loyal to my child in some certain ways. But if they're an adult and they make a choice, I don't know. It's a really, I hope I never have to face that question.
I heard a joke once that said, will you go to jail for kidnapping a person out of a cult? And the person said, not if you do it well.
Of course.
Not if you do it well. Not if it works.
That's right.
All right. Another aspect that caught my attention was the portrayal of Christianity. I expected it to play a more prominent role in the show, but the showrunners focus on loyalty and power dynamics. It's not a regret, but unexpected after the first episode or two. Yeah, I agree with that. I think there was definitely a shift away from Christianity and the difference between Protestantism and Catholicism after a while.
And the beginning of the show was setting up that I thought we were going to get more into that political mix, and we've just veered out away from it, and we've barely seen anything with the church in these last few episodes.
It almost felt odd to see Father Alvido, right?
Right.
It feels like he's out of place in the story now.
Absolutely.
Sticking to loyalty, I'm going to add another one here. The Portuguese priests' loyalty to their church. You go. Thanks for the great coverage, and I'm sending my best to John and his family. Thanks, Brian. Brian 8063. Really appreciate that, Brian, and appreciate you writing in. You want to read Lore Master Peter O.H.?
Sure, I can do that. It says, hi, David and Alicia. Oh, wait. You're back, John.
Oh, hello.
Hello. Actually, a little on-air programming conversation. I was thinking, with this little short form that Alicia and I did the other day, I have to see if she's available to this, but maybe she and I do a little quick reaction, and then you and I do the bigger one later on, because we can't make them.
Sure. Yeah. And then when when she's not available, I can go, hi, I'm Alicia. I know you, Howie.
Funny. Okay. Just some meandering thoughts on episode 8 and the overall arc. Feel free to discuss or not. If you don't already have one, I would like to propose a new rating scale. That's my man, Peter.
Oh, boy.
The Better Call Saul scale. Ooh, this is getting better and better. I haven't actually read I just cut and pasted his email into here. I didn't actually read it. So this is very cool. I loved the season finale of Better Call Saul. I thought it was so good. It would be a measure of the sneakiness and the ultimate effectiveness of a plan. I'm curious to see how Toranaga's gambit will fall into place. During episode 7, I was convinced that he was engineering everything, and furthermore, that John Blackthorne was the only one who was picking up on it, hence his public outburst at Toranaga's council. I thought that was a ruse so that he could get back to his ship and wreak havoc on Toranaga's enemies. But I'm glad I did not wager any internet points on that. The Better Call Saul sneakiness scale. That's interesting. I think we'll have to mull that over. What do you think?
I'm trying to think of other sneakiness, like the little finger involved in this, like that kind of stuff. I gotta think about it.
Okay. Peter continues, after episode 8, we're still in the dark as to Toranaga's plan as it relates to John Blackthorne. It does seem like Toranaga never had any intentions of surrendering, based on his general's observations of the priest, and then obviously at the end where he states his intentions for the audience. But his ruse is coming at an incredibly high cost. It would seem that Mariko is tasked with advancing the next phase of the plot. I'm very excited to see what that looks like. I likened this, when I was talking with Alicia, to when you're playing chess, when one is playing chess, and one sacrifices a high value piece, a rook or a castle or something like that, or even a queen, where it does cost you, but you're trying to win the game at a strategic level, right? Even though tactically it really is terrible. And the personal cost, I loved Sanada's portrayal of Toranaga in that moment where he actually is genuinely upset that he had to witness the death of his best and oldest friend.
I agree. He felt a lot there.
Yeah, it really showed. Anyway, Peter continues, I'm curious about Hiramatsu and Buntaro. I am trying to reconcile their place of honor in Toranaga's retinue with Mariko's negative view of having to marry Buntaro from the status point of view. What am I missing? Do you have any point of view on this?
I don't know at this point. I feel like there's a history bit that we're missing. I feel like we don't know about Toranaga not having as high of a stature at that point. Or maybe it's because Hiramatsu is the general, the lead advisor to Toranaga, not Toranaga himself. Like maybe they thought that Mariko would be better suited to like the son of a regent.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I think you're right. I don't think we have enough information. Because if we think about it a little bit more, Mariko's father was, I think, a higher status ranked than Toranaga. I think he was above him. And so it solidifies their relationships with Hiramatsu and him. So
yeah.
Continuing, I found Omi's sadness for Nagakado very touching. I had always assumed he was a psychopath in the making under his uncle's tutelage. I'm very interested to see where his arc leads. He seemed genuinely sad at the loss of Nagakado. He's also dealing with the difficulties in his love life that he has no real control over. Yet he seems to genuinely care for Kiku, where a more toxic man might let his insecurities guide his actions. Based on the way they interacted during the scene at the future of the red light district, do you guys think that there's a real connection between the two? Or is Kiku just playing her part in what is a very regimented society? Also, like everyone, I got a kick out of Toranaga's city planning philosophy. I hope he makes provisions for a robust zoning hearing board in his future administration.
Are we going to get like a Parks and Rec episode where everyone's just shouting at Toranaga or Man, I was going to say shouting at Nagakado, but rest in peace.
Pretty funny. I really think that they played Omi's character well, and again in the development of what he's dealing with. And I think it's a good point that somebody who would be insecure would react in very different ways. He's not happy about it, but he's certainly contained about it.
Right. Yeah, so. It's super interesting. I think, and to your question, by the way, Peter, I think that Kiku is interested in Omi, but only I'm a little bit biased because again I've seen the inner monologues a little bit more from the book. But even in the show, I mean, the first couple episodes, it seems like a lifetime away. But first couple episodes, she's like reassuring him, like, oh, maybe you can do this and that, and like really, really gassing him up. in a way that I think is beyond the level of just I'm a courtesan trying to get a better tip. Right. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, maybe she has some genuine fondness for him, but it can't ever go where she's not going to be keeping his house. She's not going to move in. They're not going to have a family, and they're not going to sail away into the sunset.
David, haven't you seen Pretty Woman? There's always hope.
All right. Wrapping up Peter's email. I think an interesting theme of the series has been the idea of who is a barbarian. The show asks some interesting questions. Might be a good topic for the overall season review. Indeed, it will be. Lastly, to circle back to John Blackthorne, it would seem he is crewless. So I'm hoping he will resume his bromance with Rodriguez, and together they can sail for the glory of Toranaga. Loving the coverage and analysis. Best regards, Peter. Good to hear from you, Peter. It's been a minute since we've gotten an email from you. So I'm glad you're still out there and listening, and thank you for being a subscriber. I think the procedural show that stars Rodriguez and Blackthorne sailing around the world and getting into crazy adventures, I'd watch that. I'd watch that in a heartbeat.
I think this whole series really is just a love story between two men.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Should I read the last one?
Do it.
All right. Lorehound Severin writes in and says, my favorite quote of the episode. When Mariko asks if Blackthorne wishes to sail for Yabashige, he says, I do not wish it. He is a shitface, but he is a brave shitface. And that is the truth. That was a really good moment.
Yeah.
I think, and one of the other podcasts on the Ringer podcast, one of the co-hosts wrote down all of Blackthorne's insults from the entire season, and he read them all through. He read them from end to end, and it was hilarious. It was very good. On the matter of loyalty, a smitten, calculating Ishido offers his hand in marriage to Ochiba, and she doesn't seem thrilled about it. Apparently, he's been crushing on her ever since she was the Taiko's most special consort lady. At the end of the episode, we see her approach him and genuflect. He smiles. Does this mean she accepts, even though the Taiko's wife's dying words to her were, Ishido comes from nothing and is nothing? What did you make of the scene where Ochiba presents herself to Ishido, John? Did she accept?
No, I am not sure if she accepts because I'm just not familiar with the customs here, but I hope not. I think it's a bad political move for her. And the show has done a good job of making me root for Toranaga and think that Toranaga would be the best leader of this, whole council. So I don't want Ishido to win. He's an insecure little man who really, I don't think has a place at this table. And not because he's a commoner, but because he's a very small person. He's really only interested in power for power's sake. And I don't think that's true of Toranaga. I think Toranaga actually does try to see the best in people and try to value those who are loyal to him. And I just don't see that with Ishido.
I absolutely thought that she was accepting his offer. The way that she bowed and the sort of, it wasn't just hey, Regent, I'm the mother of the heir and you're the regent. So, hey, what's up? She really went into a much deeper thing, showing a kind of submissiveness to him, which I would expect in the norms of a husband-wife relationship at this era. So I absolutely think she took it. And I don't wonder if her reaction to accepting his offer was as a pushback or a rejection of Daimo's comment to her. She's going to do the opposite. Oh, you say this, be nice to the hostages. No, I'm actually going to make it a little bit worse for them. I'm going to do, this other thing. I'm going to do what I want to do, not what you think you want me to do. I think she's got some pent up frustration with that situation, given that she was, drugged and probably, I don't call it rape. It was.
She was handed as just a property. To the Taiko.
Right. A womb. right? Here,
right.
Produce children.
Right. And Dayoin really perfectly allowed that and was just like, oh, this is an honor for you.
Yeah. And set it up, was complicit. That was part of her thing.
Right.
So yeah, I wouldn't doubt if Ochiba's like, oh, you say go this way, I'm going to go that way. Cause screw you.
Right.
So.
Well, David, it's been lovely talking about Shogun with you. I think, though, it's time for our programming notes.
Yes.
Which, by the way, the last big episode I heard between you and Alicia, the episode 7 episode, I looked at the time when you started the outro. Do you know how much time was left?
No.
15 minutes.
15 minutes
to do outro.
Oh, was this a Disney? Am I falling into the Disney
You're
trap?
becoming Disney Plus. So I'm going to cut you off here.
Oh, we have so much to say, though. We have to
so much to say. But if you say it all, then everybody forgets it. So
that's true.
We're going to focus on the highlights. Patreon and Supergas are lovely ways to support us. You can get in there for as little as $3 a month. You could get monthly or annual subscriptions. You get a discount for the annual subscription. It's a great time. You get early and ad-free episodes. You get the show tracker and show guide access. You get, this good, warm feeling in your heart that you're helping us grow our network and greenlight new podcasts and have a great little family here. And, of course, you get bonus content like Second Breakfast and Shireside Chats. Is that good, David?
I think you did a good job.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm not going to add anything. I'm biting my tongue.
I'm just jesting with you, but
we got in trouble for True Detective earlier in the season where we went too long on an intro. So, fair enough. Trim it up.
Right. No, that's why
it up.
I was like, when I saw the runtime of the outro, I was like, yeah, I got to say some joke about it on the next podcast.
Well played. With them. Very good. Very good.
Okay, so back to the Discord. You should really hop on there. It's a great conversation. It's a great place to talk to like-minded people who love nerdy stuff. We've got a great mod team. We've got Nate, who's a professor of Japaneseology.
Yeah, history.
Japan studies.
Yep. Asian. Yep.
And brilliant.
Yeah. Filling in so many details. It's really great.
You got great stuff. And always new channels to talk about the latest TV and movies and books and video games and whatever else you want.
That's right.
Now we've got a lot of affiliates, especially we just launched Radioactive Ramblings, a Fallout podcast with Aaron and Chase. You might recognize Aaron from our Discord server as one of our mods, our Dunedain, as Aaron K, by the way. And Aaron's a big Fallout fan. Chase is new to the property, but similar to how we did Rings of Power, one of them is the lore person, one of them is the show only watcher, and it's really a great listen. And they've been growing really quickly. We're very proud to see that they're making big strides with their download numbers, and we hope that you'll continue to listen to their episodes. They've already got episodes 1 through 3 out now. They're going to do episodes 4 through 6 as a single podcast sometime this coming week. And then I think basically once a week after that, it seems like, or later in the week of...
Well, 2 more, right? 7 and 8, more. And then a final wrap up because Amazon dropped it as a binge. So they're playing the game of trying to catch up as fast as they can.
So every few days, you're going to have a podcast till they finish up the season. And yeah.
Have you checked it out
really
yet?
Great stuff. I did the spoiler-free stuff because I didn't. Yeah. I haven't watched it yet, but I'm looking for.
No, I meant the show. Did you check out? Have you checked out?
Oh, no.
Okay.
I haven't, but I hear great things.
I started watching episode 1 and Life, whatever, and I haven't gotten back to it. Busy weekend, but I'm gonna after we finish up here, I'm gonna go finish up at least episode 1. Everybody's been talking it up. Everybody seems to be enjoying the show. So
good. Yeah. Rings and Rituals, of course, is still coming. You may have heard a promo at the beginning of this podcast if you're listening to this podcast when it came out. And it's a great podcast. I've been listening to that religiously. And Marilyn and Sarah Brown from Signum University are covering season 1 of the Rings of Power in a rewatch where they're looking at it through the lens of ritual. And what that means is they're looking at the Harfoot songs and they're looking at the dwarves and their battle of smashing rocks between, Elrond and Durin. and they're diving into all these things and what they mean about the different peoples of Middle-earth and the different characters. And it's really wonderful. They're pulling from all different Tolkien sources, and I hope you'll check that out. It's coming out every 2 weeks. It started in March, and we're looking forward to more episodes.
Yeah, it's been a good conversation, and I'm just so proud of Marilyn. You know, she wrote us a letter answering a simple question, and here she is. She's got her whole own feed, you know, talking about the things that she loves. So we are happy to be here, just creating all this space for all these other podcasters. It's very cool. Very proud.
Absolutely. Love hearing more from Marilyn. Woolshift Dust is also back, covering Beacon 23 Season 2. Alicia's done an interview with Hugh Howey, hence my joke before. She's doing some Dune stuff. She's
got her new Star Wars project, a timeline thing where like looking at the entire timeline of Star Wars, and that's getting sorted out and should be out before long. Yes, yeah. It is forthcoming.
So a lot of really cool stuff coming from Alicia. David, I feel like you're the properly Howard pitcher. I think you should pitch it. You're very good at it.
Well, they've come up with their new season. It's entitled Felonies and Fugazis, and it's all about crime movies. The podcast setting up the season is out. You can go find that now. If you go to the show notes, you can find a link to it. If you go to our website, it's in the run of episodes there. And that podcast, they draft the movies that they're going to be covering. It's very hilarious, very properly Howard. It's good stuff. They've got 10 films, and I believe the initial order is Point Break, Shakedown, Tango and Cash, Pulp Fiction, and Gross Point Blank. And we've got 5 other movies on the back half of that, but that's a good start. I put together a little show, a movie guide for that on the Notion thing, and that's available for everyone. So if you go to the Discord and you go to the Properly Howard channel, that'll be listed in there, or you can drop us an email or, you know, send us a Patreon message or something like that. And it has all of the details for all of the movies and all that kind of stuff. We don't have dates yet for when they're going to do it, but I know Anthony's been recording a lot of stuff, and I think it's going to be a very funny season.
God damn, Jimmy. This is some serious gourmet shit.
You're fast on the soundboard. I was like, wait, John sounds really weird. Oh, wait a minute. That's not John.
Man. We got to have it. We got to have the Pulp Fiction sounds.
Right. And then once we know about season 2 of Severance, we're going to be doing a 4-person podcast for that with Steve and Anthony, and their season 1 coverage is out now. So I think that's it for the affiliates. That's a lot.
A lot of stuff to cover.
You can see how many minutes. I should have set a stopwatch for.
I understand. That's why I'm here to rein you in. All right. We got a lot coming on the Lorehounds feed. Of course, we've still got more coming on Shogun. We're going to have a season wrap up that's got you, me, Alicia, David. And I guess we're going to have Nate on from the Discord.
Yeah, we're going to figure out, some sort of interview, or we haven't worked out the formatting yet, but we definitely want to talk to him a little bit at the end of the season.
Well, this is how I'm learning Nate's coming on the podcast, so this is very exciting.
You haven't been listening to the podcast. I've been shouting Nate out.
Because I was behind on the show.
Yes.
So I couldn't listen to the podcast. So I did listen to your 30 minutes with Alicia, though. That was a lot of fun. I'll go back and listen to the other ones.
That's all right.
You just did a one-shot Monkey Man with Alicia.
Yeah, very good. And we are going to do a one-shot for Civil War with Ron and Jean.
I finally got to podcast with Jean and not you, actually.
Fun.
He joined Brendan and I. We had a great time. We had a great time covering the Halo game series, which we covered I want to say 60 hours of content in an hour and 20 minutes. So it was difficult to do, but we did it and we had a lot of fun with it. I know Jean is also going to be, and Alicia, of course, will be with you again on the MCU podcast
when we have Yeah, we don't have a lot of MCU stuff right now.
I thought you were covering X-Men 97.
They want to do something. We haven't scheduled anything for it yet.
Okay.
But they want to talk. I've been hearing a lot of great stuff about X-Men 97. People have been raving about the way that you raved about Rebels or a Clone Wars, those highs. That's the same way I'm seeing people reacting to certain episodes in X-Men.
That's great.
97.
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
And then Star Wars Film Fest is coming back. We promise. We're going to be doing a New Hope soon. We've just come back and we're getting back on track with all our regular podcasts. And Marilyn and I are recording 2 podcasts this week: Silmarillion Stories of Men and Earthsea. We're going to do Dragonfly. So plenty of Pukila coming to the feed.
We've also got a one-shot. I'm going to do a one-shot with her on the completely made-up adventures of Dick Turpin, which is a fun show on Apple TV. And I think we're going to get another one-shot in for 3 Body Problem. I think Ron and I are going to talk about that.
Cool. Well, I wanted to do a one-shot for Curb Your Enthusiasm, and Ron almost did it with me. But I don't think it's going to happen. Maybe I'll find another co-host to do Curb Your Enthusiasm with me.
Yeah, I don't know who else is into talking.
Nobody
about
in the Lorehounds field.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay.
Oh well. So we've got a lot upcoming, as you can hear. We're going to be covering House of the Dragon in June. At least that. We're probably covering like a bunch of other stuff like Doctor Who, The Acolyte, The Boys, The Bear, Severance, Rings of Power, whenever that comes. We got too much stuff coming. We got to figure out our schedule.
Yeah.
But plenty of things down the pipeline.
Quick shout out to our Discord server boosters: Opus the Machine, Gnarls, Aaron K, Tiller the Thriller, Darker the Ninjas, and Duve71. Thanks for helping out the Discord and having us have more emojis and other fun stuff like that. It means a lot to us to have a supportive community for the community. John, it's been a while since you've given the shout out for the Lore Masters. I think you must have done it on the Halo one.
I did do it on the Halo one, but I'm happy to do it here too. Samartian, Mark H, Michael G, Michelle E, David W, Brian P, Nick W, SC, Peter OH, Bettina W, Adam S, Nancy M, Duve71, Brian 8063, Frederick H, Sarah L, Gareth C, Sarah, I went backwards, Eric F, Matthew M, Sarah M, DJ Miwa, Andra B, Kwang Yu, Deadeye Jedi Bob, Nathan T, Alex V, Aaron T, Sub-Zero, Aaron K, Dally V21, Mothership 61, our newest lore master.
Hey,
Gnarls?
welcome. Thank you.
Gnarls? And Adrian.
Neverlast.
Everlast.
Never least.
All right. Well, thanks, everyone. It's been a great time, and we'll see you on the next episode of Shogun. The Lorehounds podcast is produced and published by The Lorehounds. You can send questions and feedback and voicemails at thelorehounds.com/contact. Get early and ad-free access to all Lorehounds podcasts at patreon.com/thelorehounds. Any opinions stated are ours personally and do not reflect the opinion of or belong to any employers or other entities. Thanks for listening. Hey listeners, if you've been listening to our show, chances are you've heard the wonderful contributions of our favorite Tolkien scholar, Marilyn R. Pukila. Marilyn just launched her own podcast on our network called Rings and Rituals.
Join me and Dr. Sarah Brown on our journey through the Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power, through the lens of ritual. Episodes drop every other Wednesday on the Rings and Rituals feed, linked in the show notes. See you there.